welcome to another episode of the Fidelis Project podcast. Today we're going to listen in to a talk that Dr. Frank gave to a church planting team in Chiang Rai, Thailand, as they were seeking to initiate and begin an international church there. In this talk, Dr. Frank casts vision for strategic and bold evangelism church planting and gives some different things that he was observing at the time. He gave this talk in 2017, but I think we'll find that many of the things that he has said have either already come about or are currently happening right now before our very eyes. I hope you really enjoy this special presentation.
Well, it's great to be here. Jan and I have attended many international churches in this region, but also in Chiang Mai. And you guys are doing a great job. I just want to tell you that. It's great. We enjoy coming. We've come more than once, so that's a good thing. So we enjoy it. It's kind of a nice break from some other things that we're doing. But you're all from SoCal. Jan, she's from Northern California. I'm a Yankee. I'm from New England. I'm Massachusetts, as some of you know. So I talk a little gangster. But it's the way we really talk. So don't be put off by it. But sometimes I'll turn it on a little bit to make a point. But besides that, so we're gonna dream today. I just kind of want to make some opening comments and kind of give you I want you to reflect, take like a broad view of things today, and we're gonna leave a lot of time for interaction. So whatever questions you want to ask, I'm going to have some introductory ideas to kind of hopefully expand our brains a little bit. But when it's time for question and answers, you can talk about what I presented. You can ask more questions along those lines. You can talk about us, the way we run our lives, the way we raised our kids, living out here, missions, anything like that you can ask us about, okay? So we're very much an open book. We're happy to share everything that God has invested in our lives. We don't claim to know everything. So what I don't know, I'll make up for with louder speaking and enthusiasm, things like that, cover up my ignorance. But generally, I figure I might know a little bit more than you guys, so whatever I know, I'm happy to pass that on. But I just want to start off by saying I think you guys coming in this time in history is a wonderful time to be a missionary. It is fantastic. When we first came out here, the reason why we came to Thailand was that was the only country that was open to any kind of quote-unquote missionary work, where you could get a missionary visa in Southeast Asia, right. This whole region, China was blocked off completely. You had the war in Vietnam and Laos. Burma was a dictated state with, they were dictators, but they're highly influenced by socialism and things like that. So anyways, there wasn't much going on beyond the borders. Thailand, no one wanted to be missionaries up in this region working with tribal people because it was dangerous in a lot of ways, okay? And we believed our ministry was where other missionaries didn't want to go. So we came up here. We were going to work with the Karen tribes. You ever hear the Karen people? There's many branches of them, but if you go south, west of Chiang Mai, a place called Omkoi, there's Po Karen and Sagar Karen there. We were going to work with an unreached group there called Po. But then our organization asked us to work with all these tribals that were coming into Chiang Mai. So we pioneered what we call an intertribal church, urban tribal work, which was never done in Thailand before. So that was our first assignment. Then eventually, God led us to go not too far from here in the Ching Kong area, right along the Mekong River. And we lived in a tribal village with the Hmong people there. And that's where our kids grew up too. We have 3 sons. 2 of them were born in Chiang Mai. And when they were very little, they grew up in a tribal village, ran around just like the tribal kids, could hardly tell any difference between them. And they spoke fluent Hmong, and our oldest son, he went to Thai kindergarten at some point, so he was really good in Thai. The next 2 were really good in Hmong, but they also went back and forth. So when we came here, things were very, very different. But, I'm kind of a motivated guy, maybe that'll come across, but I'll try to be calm, all right? Because when you talk about Jesus and missions, I am really enthusiastic. When I encountered Jesus back some years ago, and then when I went to the University of Massachusetts, I'm very enthusiastic about Jesus. He transformed my life, put my life upside down, and I'm very enthusiastic kind of guy. I'm a highly motivated kind of guy. And I would say that when we first came 30 years ago, as motivated as I was then, I'm more motivated now. Which, if you look at a lot of missionaries, that's probably an exception more than the rule, okay? Because there's a lot of things that can beat you down. And if you want to talk about that, we can talk about that. We've had our highs, we've had our lows. But I think my enthusiasm for what God is doing in the region, and now I'm exposed to a lot of things around the world, God is doing amazing things. So we are at a pivotal time in history for whatever that means. I think if you look at Scripture, particularly end time, eschatology things, and you look at the news, there's a lot of interesting things happening. And I think we should be highly motivated, enthusiastic, and this is part of my personality and my gifting is not only highly motivated, but highly focused and get on with the job. I've been accused many times of saying that people say, why are you always in a hurry? And my answer is always, because there's so much to do. There's a lot of people who want to hear about Jesus, so let's go tell them. Okay, so I'm usually a straight line guy. There's a lot of people, they like to do projects, platforms, and all that kind of stuff. My response is always, let's try preaching the gospel first and see what happens. If that doesn't work, maybe we find some other platforms and then we'll go to the platform things. Even though I've done various platform things with various people, and there's some amazing people doing that kind of work as well. But I'm just an old school, let's preach the gospel, talk about Jesus, let them transform people, and send these people, make them part of the mission force, and let's go reach some more people. So I spend almost 100% of my time doing that, which is rare in mission circles. A lot of times people get sloughed off to do this and that, but we've tried to be focused on the main thing. So I just want to, first of all, I just want to say that you here coming now at this point in time and in history in this region of the world, you are on the threshold of doing wonderful things, being exposed to amazing things. Now, I will tell you this up front, it's not going to feel that way. And it probably for many of you doesn't feel that way right now, okay? But it is true, so keep that in your mind, okay? It doesn't get much better than this, okay? Some people say it's so hard. Well, it can be a lot harder in a lot of other places. Not to say that Thailand is easy, but there's so much opportunity in so many places. So I want to encourage you with that perspective. Another thing I want to point out, and this I want you to keep in the back of your brains, is I'm just going to draw a little graph here, okay? Okay, you all seen this in your math books or whatever. And this is on this axis, it's going to be the rate of change. And this is going to be time on this axis. Now, when I draw a line like this, what does that mean? That's right, exponential. So, I want you to just keep the single point in mind. You want to? Okay, thank you. I want to make sure you all can see, so I'll move wherever I need to move. Okay. Okay, let's say we're at this point. We're at this point. Okay. When we talk about discipleship, when we talk about missions today, the way I observe it being done, okay, and the way I see discipleship being done, we are doing discipleship and church planting and missions for this era. But we're at this era, and we need to prepare people and the way we do missions for that period of time. But we're way back here. So keep that in mind when we share today, okay? So we're part of this ministry called the Jonathan Project. I'm not going to go into that whole thing. But you remember the story of Jonathan in 1 Samuel 14? He's going to go take a hill. Him and his armor bearer took on a whole army, and a movement resulted. If you want to hear more about that, maybe I'll share that later. But if you take the Jonathan training, you'll hear a lot about that. But the point of that story is Jonathan turned to his armor bearer and says, come, let us go to the outposts of those Philistines. Perhaps the Lord will intervene on our behalf. Why? For nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. So the bottom line, and I want to leave this thought with you as well, we're looking for Jonathans. That's what we're looking for in our ministry. They come in all shapes and sizes, many cultures, languages, and many places around the world. But they're scattered all over the world, and they're amazing people to work with. I hope you guys are Jonathan types. That's what we're looking for. Saul, he looked at the same situation, didn't he? And what did he do? He started a worship service underneath the pomegranate tree. Not that worship is a bad thing, but that's not what God wanted to do at that moment. But Jonathan looked at the situation, responded in faith. How do we know that? By what he said. He spoke the word of faith. And then how do we know that the word of faith meant something? By what he did. Obedient action as a result of who God is and what his promises are to his people. Okay, do I get your attention yet? Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. We are here. We're doing missions, discipleship, and church planting for this era. But what should we be aiming for? Here. Okay, so that's what we're going to discuss today. So let me turn this around. It's not going to fall down on me, is it? Oh, I can just turn the computer. I guess it would be easy. Sorry for the light. Putting in a light bulb, but turning the ladder. Okay, so I'm going to put this down. Get this thing going. Now, one of our greatest joys that Jan and I have is we work with Jonathan types around the world. And we have a group of us that get together once a year in person. That's in November. I guess some of you might call it a board meeting. And we get together through Skype for a second meeting twice a year. That's all. Very motivated guys. All been trained in Jonathan. And all going out there doing some pretty amazing stuff. And I can share some of that if you're interested. But what we do is we brainstorm. We're trying to always look here. This is what we're always aiming for. So we're always making adjustments. But there's some pretty smart guys that I get to rub shoulders with. I always take great pride that I'm the dumbest guy in the room, okay? And actually, that's a good leadership principle. Try to be the dumbest guy in the room at all times, and you'll get some pretty smart people in the room, if you know what I mean. I'm not sure if you ever tried that tactic, but I love it. So anyway, so we put some of these things together. One of the guys, his name is Curtis Sargent. You ever hear of Curtis Sargent? I think he is one of the greatest missionary tacticians in the world today. Him and I are good friends, and he put together some thoughts, and I went over these, and I thought, maybe this will be good for you guys to think about, okay? Him and I, we're exactly the same in terms of passion and focus, but our personalities are different, and he's an introvert, I'm an extrovert, okay, at least in public. So he sits around and he likes to think about these things. All right, so we'll go through some of this. Now, the way I do things is you can interrupt me at any time. If you don't understand something because of my accent, you can interrupt me. But more than that, if you don't understand something or you want to explore an idea a little bit, we can stop and ponder on those things. And I'm going to try to get this done by 10 or a little after, okay? So the thing is, we must be a movement. If you read my book, and if you do take the training in January, which I highly encourage you to do, is you're going to have to read the book. And I think I made a solid argument for movements based in biblical theology and based in solid missiology. For every reason, we should have movements going on, okay? Now, let me just throw out this idea as well, as I'm going to be throwing out little tidbits. Just think about it. Let me ask you, if you lead someone to Christ, what are some of the things you're going to ask them to do? You want them to obey, right? Okay, what do you want them to obey? Baptism, okay. Come on, you Biola guys. Huh? Every command, okay. What are those? Make disciples, okay. How do we do that? Yeah, what are some of the things? Just think about what Jesus said. That's a big thing. First thing is go, okay? We got to go. We got to make disciples. And then we got to teach them to do what? Obey everything. All right? Okay? So disciples make disciples. At the end of this presentation, we're going to talk a lot more about that. So let's say let's say you teach everybody to be on witness. Take personal responsibility for lost people around you. Is that a good thing to teach somebody when you're discipling them? Seems pretty obvious, right? Okay, so let's dwell on that one point alone. We teach people how to witness, how to give their testimony, how to share simple gospel presentation, be aware of lost people around them, praying for opportunities to have contact with these people so that you can bless them by telling them the good news. We're blessing them, okay? Now, if they do that, are you going to be surprised if they actually go tell people about Jesus? I hope you're not. You should expect it, and they should know you should expect it, okay? And you should be asking them about it all the time. And so let's say they do, and they actually lead somebody else to Christ. Is that a good thing? What should they do with that person? Same thing, okay? And then that person, he's going to be taught to do what? Same thing, okay? So naturally, within the DNA of the Great Commission, shouldn't movements happen? That's right. So think about this. The only reason a movement doesn't happen is disobedience. Far too often, I believe that disobedience happens at the missionary level, and then even at the local leadership level, indigenous leaders level. It happens at the most pivotal point in the whole discipleship process. We kill it right on the spot. Yeah. I don't think you can ever talk too much about the Great Commission and what we need to do. And you need to be equipping people so they have the confidence to obey and walk that out. Do something in a way that is reproducible so they can pass it on easy. Pretty basic. But I'll tell you, just like this graph shows, it's not happening. Matter of fact, if you do a survey in churches in the United States, what percentage of churches would say they're doing discipleship well? 5%, 6%, that's it. There's a massive, I have a whole nother video we did on that, but maybe some other time on that. Discipleship is not happening. Movements are not happening because discipleship isn't happening. And discipleship isn't happening because I don't think people are focused and motivated enough. That's my thing, okay? I would rather, try to rein somebody in a little bit instead of trying to light a fire under people. I'm looking for people that are self-motivated. The work that we do requires you need to be self-motivated, self-disciplined, focused. And with that comes training, okay? And we need to think all that through, okay? So we must become a movement. Actually, we're trying to start a movement in the United States. I like to call it the agape counterinsurgency. Okay, maybe we'll talk about that. If you want to know about that, you can ask me later, okay? But we must become a movement, and I'm going to give you the rationale of why we need to do that, okay? Okay, there's a rising tide one. There's a rising population, okay? Okay, this is what Tillich said. The gospel must be preached afresh and told in new ways to each generation. Since every generation has its own unique questions, true? We are living in a very unique period of time, my friends. And, how do leaders react to unsettled times? Do they see that as a positive or a negative? Huh? Sometimes, some do, but the real leaders, those aren't real leaders. Maybe those positional leaders do that, but the real leaders, what do? They see opportunity. So actually, in Jonathan's that we train, we say look for trends all the time, because with changing trends comes opportunity. Okay, so we're in great time of great opportunity right now. Since every generation has its unique questions, the gospel must constantly be forwarded to a new address because the recipient is repeatedly changing his place of address. And that goes double, triple, quadruple for you guys in a cross-cultural situation. Okay. Out here, it is nothing like Southern California, if you haven't noticed yet, all right? Okay? Okay, and here it goes. He's reinforcing what I just said. This is especially true in this generation. Your generation is unlike any in all of history. I wish I was your age, but I knew what I know now. Okay, how many old guys you ever hear say that, right? We all say that, right? Okay, so world population growth. Here's a trend, okay? Okay, the Great Commission was preached there. Just follow along here. You can read that, right? I guess this reinforced what I just pointed out. This population growth happened despite these terrible human tragedies. World War I. Any history buffs here? Okay. All right, well, a lot of people died in World War I. At the same time, well, you had the Russian Civil War. That's when the communists took over. You had the Spanish flu, killed tens of millions of people. All at the same time, guys. We talk about World War I. It was a terrible human tragedy, but actually the influenza that hit Europe and North America was more devastating even than that. People were just dying on the streets. Then you had the Great Depression. Then you had Stalin's Great Purge. The guy killed millions and millions and millions and millions of people. Are you guys socialists, by the way? There's a lot of socialists your generation. I wouldn't advise it. But I praise God every day for communism. Because of communism, that's how I'm able to get into a lot of these countries. And the people are open with the gospel because they're sick and tired of all this stuff. Okay, then you had World War II. I'm an immigrant to the United States, just so you know. My parents, and when I was born the day my parents immigrated to the United States. Okay, they were Germans that settled in Eastern Europe. When the war was going bad for the Germans, the Russians came across and they hated Germans. The Germans fled for their lives. It was actually a genocide among my people group. Anyway, so then after the war, we immigrated to the United States, started a new life, for which I am very grateful. So there you go. These are the various things that happened during those years. But what happened to the population growth in the world? Did it slow down? No. You know, a major terrible thing could happen again. We had AIDS. That was a huge outbreak. Did you know the center of AIDS spread in this part of the region was right here in Thailand? Because the flesh trade is so prevalent in this part of the world. Back when we knew missionaries, back in the late 80s, early 90s, they used to have all these AIDS workshops, and I used to go to them, and I used to hear these Thai doctors, man, they used to bash their own country and saying just how bad the attitude of people were in this country towards all that. Oh, even the government says, oh, yeah, you get AIDS, you just take a pill, and you'll be okay, don't worry about it. Anyways, that's a whole nother topic. But so, since 1970, what happened also? Right? Is population growth going down? I think there could be another big epidemic, by the way. All right, what else is going on here? Scary stuff? Okay, how about rising technology? You guys are all Californians. We got a couple people from Northern California. I moved to California in 1980. There was an ad in the newspaper, desperate woman looking for a desperate man, and I answered it and found my wife that way. She hates it when I tell that story, but I love saying it. No, we met at her church where her dad was the pastor. So, okay, rising technology. So we know a lot of guys, actually some very famous people in the high-tech industry. Really very well known. So let's see what's going on in this sector, okay? So this is another rising tide that we need to be aware of. Okay, accelerating growth in technology. Look at that. So we see what kind of a curve? Daniel, you're a Berkeley grad. There you go. Exponential curve, and see what's going on there as the growth continues to dramatically increase. Okay, all these major things that are happening. And we're going to take a little deeper look at that, since we have some techies in here, right? Yeah, where's that other guy that came in earlier? Yeah, he's losing out, man. So there you go. I don't have to read them. You all know this is happening. I remember when I was up in the mountains of southern China, sneaking around in those hills up there, trying to stay away from the police and the military guys up there, thinking, wow, it'd be so nice to sit on top of a mountain, have a little hand device, push a button and talk to anywhere in the world. That was like the wildest dream back then. It's like, it's nothing today. when I'm in remote, when I was with these guys in northern Laos, I had a special visa from the Laotian government. I could go into any remote village I wanted to, and they are out in the middle of nowhere. Maybe not the end of the world, but you could definitely see it from there. Everybody's got their cell phones. So actually, we use that technology now. Radio ministry, we should do a lot of that. We still do radio programs, but we download those on little SIM cards and stuff, and we hand those out by the millions. You can listen all day you want, all day on your phone. Okay, that's what we're doing. People love it up in those remote areas. Okay, so there it is. I don't have to talk any more about that. Like I say, I got people that, friends of mine, that are very well known, like superstars, like Michael Jordans in the high-tech industry. But they're Christians, by the way. I forgot to make that point. They're lovers of Jesus, and many of them give of their resources very generously toward the Jonathan and other related ministries to advance God's kingdom. So, was 2007 the inflection point? Did we just look at this? I must have pushed the wrong direction on the button. I like this Amazon releases Kindle. I remember lugging those books, my kids homeschooling when we lived in the village, and any books my wife wanted to read. I just carry my iPad around. Amen. Thank God for Kindle. What I've realized, if you want to be a tribal missionary with a family, the husband is the pack mule. We lift all the heavy stuff. So I taught my whole family, pack light. Okay, how does the rise in tech affect us? Okay, how does it? Okay, so here's some things. So my undergraduate work is from the University of Massachusetts. I was a sports medicine major. Okay, so we did a lot. Actually, that's what strengthened my faith, actually, studying the sciences in a very secular university. Actually, we were more secular than Berkeley back then, back in the 70s. Long time ago. Okay, let's look at some of these. Scientific data output increases by 30% annually. Okay, we're going to look at the repercussions of what all this means here in a minute. Language is changing at an exponential rate. Tech dependence is rising with each generation. You guys pretty dependent on high tech? Are you loving it? When we used to live in the village, how long did it take us to write a letter to your mom and receive it back? 2 weeks. That was it, bang, right on the money. We used to have to drive an hour and a half to go to find one phone. And we could call, and it was an arm and a leg to call. Okay, so you were very much closed off from the rest of the world, which in some ways I think is a good thing. Sometimes I think we got to close our computers. Don't call home. Don't cry on mama's shoulder. Just get on with it, man. So, and the laws cannot keep up with changing technology. We'll move from the information age to surveillance age. So let me just make a quick comment about this. This cuts both ways. Okay, there's a lot of spying going on. Okay, a lot of spying going on by a whole bunch of governments, particularly those governments that hate Christians. All right, but we can use that in reverse. I get guys that I work with in North Africa and the Middle East that use social networking in a very powerful way to reach a lot of Muslims with the gospel on a daily basis. If you want to talk about that, we can talk about that as well. Okay, so they're developing apps and all that kind of stuff. So it is pretty amazing what's going on. Cuts both ways. Cuts both ways. Let's keep going. How much is an exabyte? Okay, that's how much information was recorded and replicated in 2002. Now we do that much information, how many days? That's right. That's my high-tech buddies. That's what they say. They said, we haven't even seen the beginning. Okay, so there it is. You can just read it yourself right there. The way we use Google and all that. Okay, but the scary thing here is the U.S. Senate, the bottom one, the U.S. Senate, for those of us, we're all Americans here, right? Voted to make it legal for a corporation to collect your data and share your web browsing history without your permission. That's why you don't ever see me on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. I carry dumb phones all the time. I still have an iPad and a computer, but I leave my computer out wherever I am, and I travel with my iPad. but I try to use it as little as possible. I don't want anybody tracking me. But, well, did you know that the U.S. government considered the Bible-believing Christians one of the greatest threats, even more than terrorism in the United States? Did you know that? Yeah, we have the evidence for that. Actually, it used to be on the State Department's website and the FBI website. Yeah, a lot of Christians don't know that. So things are changing even within our own country. Okay, we're going to talk more about that here in a second. Tide 3, rising economic gap. Well, there's a lot of money on this planet. Okay? Now, I think there's some things we've got to be really aware of. Now, I believe as missionaries, you've got to be aware of what's going out there in global trends, by the way, because it affects what you're doing in your work. Okay? Negative interest rates. You know what that is? Yeah, that's what it comes down. So that's what, if you want to buy a house in America, guys, now's the time to do it, because it's not going to get any cheaper. Okay? Money isn't worth anything. And it's becoming less worth things. Like, look at this next one. Fiat currencies. They are self-expanding through frequent interventions such as quantitative easing. All right, what does that mean? Right. That's part of it. But I'll make it even more simpler. Okay? The money, the United States government, for example, goes down in the basement, prints more money, and pays their bills. But there's no backing behind that currency. So your money is getting worth less and less. And historically speaking, when you do things like that, it blows up the government so that your money is worth nothing. Okay? A lot of socialists like doing that. So how many of you think that that piece of paper that you carry is worth something? Is it innately worth anything? Not a thing. All it is printed paper. You know what a bond is? You can buy a bond. That's all that is. Printed currency, all it is a bond representing something. But so there's actually people in the world that think when you print out money, give it to people, it actually gives them value. It doesn't. And what it does is it blows up the whole system. So actually the United States economy is a lot more finicky. And a lot of European economies, they're even more at the tipping point. Because all they're doing is pumping out money that's worth nothing. But see, the people haven't got a clue yet. If people really start getting a clue, then the whole thing's going to blow up. Plus, what's the world currency today, guys? The U.S. dollar. We're lucky we're Americans. Okay, so that means all trade is done on the basis of the U.S. dollar. Am I boring all you guys? Okay, that's my wife. All I can say is we pay our bills, our debts, because we can go in the cellar and print it. Okay, no other country can do that. So China and Russia and maybe India recently got together and say, we're going to develop another world currency to challenge the U.S. dollar. And if that happens, a lot of things are going to change. So anyways, these are all changes. My wife says move on, so I'm moving on. Okay. Okay. Power shifting to the few. You can just read that. There's a lot of money out there, but who's getting it? Only a few people. The number of billionaires are increasing by a lot, and they're hoarding the money. They're working with the government in order to have the government policy in their favor, so they keep on making money. Okay? Times are changing. How about you? Credentials, hopefully this will be more interesting to you. Now, I find all of this interesting, but obviously not to all of you. Credentials in most fields lose relevancy in a day. Education must be what? Expertise in most fields is no longer a valid currency because the inflation rate is just too high. So this is another thing I see. Let's see if it's going to come here on the next slide. Okay. When you want to get missionary training, where do you go, typically? Seminary. And where do the teachers come from? Seminary. And where did they come from before they went to seminary? What is the currency of most seminaries in order to attract students? The name of the professor and his credentials and his experience, okay? I've been noticing this for over 10 years, 15 years. Their experience is way out of date within just a few years. So if you want to be a relevant missionary, don't go to seminary and teach, and get some basic training in seminary, but this is when you come out here, then you should really be learning. Okay, you should be really learning. Okay, so things are changing. Are we changing with the times? Okay, leader is no longer a bridge from the present to the future. You know all those talking heads that we see on the TV news and all that? These people are so irrelevant. Okay, I don't even know why we listen to them. I always yell at my wife with that. Why are you listening to those guys? I don't know what the heck they're talking about. Okay, now the challenge is to bridge from yesterday to today. So let me just throw this in. So whatever training we do, whatever activities we engage in, we must be constantly assessing, looking at what we're doing, reflecting, making adjustments, and then move forward constantly. So in the Jonathan training, we have that built into to the way we do the training. So people that we train with what we know today, we send them out and we hear them doing good things out there. What do? We say, you're going to come back. We taught you. You're out there. You've learned a lot of things. We see it in the fruit that you're having. You're coming back and you're going to teach us, and you're going to be one of the trainers now. So we're constantly upgrading our training. It's just built into the system. So this is something that is very important for you to be thinking about. Okay, here's a big one. Resources cannot be banked. They must be used while available. So get on the bandwagon, get moving, be learning, reflect. So there's two things people ask me all the time. What can we do better as missionaries? I say, number one, a lot of missionaries are not showing enough initiative. They're not nearly aggressive enough. Be really aggressive. Push the envelope as much as you can in all categories, as much as you have energy for and focus for, okay? I know we have families, we have all those things, but whatever opportunity you have, push it to the limit, push it to the max, okay? Like, for example, back in the 90s, we were trekking cross borders. We were going to unreached, me and a couple other guys were probably the first one in a lot of these areas, okay? We didn't go there. There's a lot of missionaries back then. How can I go live in Laos and live there and get a visa so I can live there? And we say, who cares if you live there now? We should be thinking, how are we going to reach this whole population segment here? Maybe you should live there, maybe you shouldn't live there. Maybe you should go in temporary, maybe you should live there long term. There's a whole bunch of options available to you. Okay, we didn't care if you stayed there long term. So some of the guys I work with that were more traditionalists, they would say, well, we can't rock the boat, Frank, because we might lose our visas. And I says, who cares? Our main thing is not to get our visa anymore. Our main thing is the main thing. And what's the main thing, guys? Am I talking too loud? Yeah. So being aggressive. I like to use the word aggressive, and I mean that in the best sense of the word. The other thing that I see a lot of missionaries, they don't reflect. They don't observe. They don't look. They don't reflect, they don't assess, and they don't make adjustments. Okay? They're in a fixed state. But this whole process is dynamic. Okay? It's dynamic. So the things that we're doing today, for example, are so exciting. But I'm a wild dreamer, so a lot of my friends. But we're doing way more than we dreamed about 25 years ago. And this was like our wildest dreams. But we're way beyond that, guys. So what are we going to do in the next 5, 10, 15 years? Do you want to be a leader in that process or not? It's up to you. You can choose. Here's a nugget for you. You can choose what your missionary career is going to be like. There's going to be a lot of things that's going to hit you, and you can choose to go down, or you can choose to stand up. It's up to you. You could choose to retreat. You could choose to go into catatonic, whatever it is. We have a psych major here. Yeah. Or you can say, I'm getting up. I'm going to move forward. Okay? And, the It's up to you. You can choose the way you want your missionary career to be. There's going to be everything thrown at you. And if you want to talk more about that, we can. So, all right, strategic planning must be replaced with strategic people. Ah, yes. Thank you, Jesus, for these words. Yes. I'm more interested in the kind of people I work with than how big the team is or what plans, even though I'm all for planning, okay? But I want to work with people that are strategic, that are aggressive, that are willing to pull out the sword like Jonathan did. So when we do the Jonathan training, we go into that story in some detail. And I usually make it a point now. Some people really don't like the story. They say it's too violent and bloody. I said, well, heck, it's in the Bible, for Pete's sakes. Got to have some kind of spiritual relevance here. But the point is, there comes a time where you're going to have to decide. You're going to have to pull out the sword. In other words, you're going to engage your people group. Okay, you're going to do the thing that's difficult. You're going to move way beyond your comfort zone. And that's going to be probably 99% of your time is going to be moving out of your comfort zone if you really want to make an impact with people all around you. 99%, so get used to being uncomfortable. Okay, so that's if you want to make an impact. So eventually you're going to have to pull out the sword and engage the enemy. Okay? And then eventually the people that you have behind you, your armor bearers, they're going to really take out that spear, like the story says, and finish off the enemy. Now, I mean that in the most positive sense of all these terms that I just threw out there, okay? There is a battle dynamic that we are engaging in, and you got to be ready for it. That's why we do have a full armor, and I suggest to put it on and keep it on every day. And that's a whole nother topic, okay? So we got to surround ourselves with strategic people. Some people, they want to have big teams. I don't want big teams. I want the few. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. Give me the few. Give me the strategic thinkers, the aggressive ones, the faith-filled ones. I think people, the aggressive ones, basically take God at his word and say, all right, God said that's good enough for me. Let's get going. Okay, back in the day, remember Psalms, 33, 10 and 11? The Lord foils the plans of the nations. He thwarts the purposes of the peoples, but the plans of the Lord stand firm forever, the purposes of his heart to all generations. We used to stand on the border of Laos. Our village was right next to the high mountain. You go up there, get to the top, and there's the border, a big cliff. That was the Lao-Thai border. We used to go up there and pray, and we used to quote that verse all the time. Laos was shut tight, man, but now it is open. Okay, again, people are here. They're still thinking like it was then, but we need to be thinking like it's going to be in the future. Okay, look for those trends. That's why I'm taking this time to help you look at some of these things. Times are changing. How about you? Our old model of church was designed when the earth was far less populated, growing at a moderate pace, and the church was on Main Street. That time, what? Let's read it all together. That time. So, that's right. Scale is a challenge. How much bigger can our population grow? Are we near the end? How can we not be? How can we fulfill our mandate for Jesus? Speed is a challenge. What's scary is not how fast we have come, but how much faster we can go. How long can the pace continue? We can't just catch up. We have to keep up. Are we ready? Are we helping others to be ready? Or are we just planting our heads in the sand, hoping that things are fine? So a lot of people do that. I will tell you, a lot of missionaries come with very high hopes and expectation. Things get tough, and they do the easy thing. They'll switch. We don't need that. Okay. There's a lot of missionary work going on. There's a lot of missionary work going on, but not a lot of church planting. There's a lot of talk about Jesus, but not a lot of talk of preaching Jesus, the gospel, of that type. Okay. Some good news, though. Who's in control? Yeah, that's right. So I'm one of those guys. You want to check, get a reality check? Stick your nose in the Bible and read it for meaning. Okay, read it for meaning and believe it. And those good parts, those juicy ones that help build your faith, memorize it. I'm an old navigator. Any guys know Navigators Ministry? All right, back at UMass, man. The guy that discipled me was pretty awesome. So here we go. So social media, I talked about that already. See, for example, on this one, you know what this means? 4 degrees versus 6 degrees? How many people between you and somebody else? I'm one person away from Donald Trump. One person away. Remember when Trump had a bunch of high techies in there? Remember, you know how he has these meetings and stuff like that? I said, okay, I'm going to watch this YouTube, see if one of my buddies in there. Sure enough, he was in there. So I wrote him, hey, I saw you on TV, man. How'd it go with Donald? He says, yeah, it went pretty good. That guy is a mover and shaker for Jesus in the high-tech industry. He's got a big target on his back, but he's not afraid of these guys. Yeah, he wants to see a movement to Christ in the Bay Area. So when you go back there, join the movement. Okay. Anyways, I don't want to dwell on some of these things. So our ideas are exploding. I think my friend's got to lessen some of the drama and get to the point. Okay, in the beginning, God created, and what did he say? That's right, fruitful might. The DNA of the gospel, the DNA of the Christian life is multiplication. Matter of fact, Jesus says, show yourself to be my disciple by reproducing yourself, bearing fruit. And he goes on and he says, Jesus says, you did not choose me. I chose you and appointed you to go bear fruit that will last. Any amens on that one? That's right. You know, when I'm really down, and sometimes I get down, really down, I remember the Word of God. I go some of my sweetest times. Actually, in my private life, I'm an introvert. In my public life, I'm an extrovert. So I got to have that introvert time with Jesus. And that's where my source is. If there's any strength there, it's all because of Jesus. Okay, I'm a very simple blue-collar guy. So there it is. We just quoted that, the Great Commission. So we got to get out there, right? Okay. So there it is. Exponential growth starts small. And there you'll see the numbers. That's the way it is. That's what we need to be thinking. And we need to be thinking deliberately in these terms. Okay, let me ask you this question. You ever notice when people act in the flesh, in their own effort, they're trying to get something going? That's terrible, right? Acting in the flesh. We all do that sometimes, right? Yeah. But what about over-spiritualization? Over-spiritualizing things. Is that bad too? But we sound so good when we over-spiritualize things, right? I believe in a very deeply spiritual relationship with Jesus. Don't get me wrong, okay? I'm all for the spiritual side of it, okay? But when we over-spiritualize, to me, that's in the flesh too. And they're both wrong, okay? Always see Jesus has a command. He's equipped us, given us what we need, mainly the Holy Spirit. So let's get on with it. And, we can learn things. And as we learn things, we reflect, we assess, and we adjust, right? So this is what we want to look for here. Okay, so this is my buddy. So in 20 years, he says, this is where we'll be. And then in 34 more years, we got the whole world won for Jesus. If you knew Curtis, this is totally within character. My vision is mostly for East Asia. People called me crazy back then. But now, my friend, his is the whole world. That's all he's thinking about, how to reach the whole world. So I'm glad, like the Jonathan thing, it's a very organic, indigenous, simple thing, but it's going to become a worldwide movement because we follow these principles here, and they're all biblical principles. Matter of fact, when we go to meetings, we'll say, okay, who taught you? And who did you teach? Who did you teach? Okay. And we can follow spiritual generations. And you heard me say this, Daniel, last week. If you're a good Jonathan, quote-unquote Jonathan, you should be able to strike your target from anywhere around the world. In other words, if you're focusing on a people group or a population segment, you should be able to affect them from any place around the world. Okay? That's the way I look at it. You're dangerous in that way, in the best sense of the word, okay? That's why I call the counterinsurgency, I call it an agape. That's what we need. A lot of the social problems we see, even in the United States today, solved very, very easy. Follow Jesus, obey him. Forgive your enemies, love your enemies, do good to those that harm you, and forgive. Okay, that's it, no more problems. That's right. How many of you were pagans before you became Christians? Okay, 2 of us. All right. Yeah. I come from an immigrant, hardworking, blue-collar family. That's it. My dad was not a big fan of Jesus. Okay. So movements are most vulnerable at the beginning. In other words, we start off and then we just go slower and slower. Okay, that's what that's trying to illustrate. Okay, and here's some of the reasons. Okay, the seduction of addition in early stages. Too many people are satisfied with addition and not multiplication. Corrupted DNA in the disciples. How many remember what DNA is? Deoxyribonucleic acid. You know, remember that, the good thing? And remember your first general chemistry class, you have to denature DNA? Remember doing all that kind of stuff? Yeah, pretty cool stuff, right? Well, it can be corrupted. So what are we planting in our disciples? What are we putting in them? Are we putting something in them that can reproduce? But before we put something in them that can reproduce, we must be that DNA. It's a lifestyle. It is not a strategy. It's a lifestyle. You're part of a revolution. You need to think in those terms. I hate using those terms because it's so misunderstood. But we must think in revolutionary terms, not in, I'm just a nice little Christian. I was 2 months ago, I was in Malaysia speaking at a missions conference there. Then I taught a missions class. But what I stress, and what I'll say to you too, what is the tribal symbol of the tribe of Judah? You know what the symbol is? You're right. It's the lion. But I like to point out to everybody, Christianity is lived too much like nice little kitties. We're nice little furry kitties. So nice, but so harmless. Okay, now I think we've got to get back to being lions. That's my view of the thing. Become lions. Everybody wants to tame us, and there's too many Christians trying to tame us, too many pastors. So again, like I said, I'm a little wild. You know, if you don't have to hang around me if you don't want to, it's okay. Yeah. That's because I pay her. Okay, there it is. Human dependency issues, tons of them. People start off doing, okay, we're going to reach these hard-to-reach people. That's too hard. Let's go do something. And then you build something, and everybody's dependent on the foreign funds and all that kind of stuff. Okay, lack of an apostolic, prophetic foundation. I totally agree on that.
Right.
Yeah. Human dependency issues that we make our ministry depend on us. The growth of that ministry is dependent on us, either through our teaching or coming to fix problems or by giving of money. Okay? Money is a factor in doing missions, but it is a much smaller factor than people think. Okay? Now, lack of apostolic prophetic foundation. What's the apostolic gift? What's the apostolic gift? I won't ask Daniel. He only went to Berkeley. How about you? How about you Biola folks and New Tribes Missions guys, right? What's the prophetic gift? Well, I asked the apostolic, right?
I see apostolic as pioneering.
Right. Yeah, you got pioneers on your team or not, you know? You want apostolic gifted leaders. That is the basic DNA of what I would call a Jonathan. Okay? That's the way God made them. So we got to cut them loose. Apostolic gifted people, when they're not cut loose, they get very frustrated. And most organizations do not like apostolic leaders because they rock the boat. Okay? So you need those people that are apostolic or being led by apostolic leaders. Okay? What is the prophetic gift? Yeah, you hear from God. You're here because God brought you here or not. Okay? That's it. So what is the difference between the prophetic gift and the teaching gift and the gifts of what Paul wrote in Ephesians chapter 4, 11, and 12? He's pointed some to be apostles, some to be prophets, some to be evangelists, some to be pastors and teachers. To do what? Build up God's people, right? What's the difference between the teaching and the prophetic? Teaching is you're just teaching. Okay, this is what the Bible means. See this word, this is the Greek word, all that stuff. Prophetic is, hey guys, I was just reading this in Scripture last night. God is speaking to us, and I'm passing on the word to you guys. You believe it? Any other prophets in here confirm the word or not? Yeah, that you're motivated. That's how the whole Jonathan ministry started, actually, when we were living in the village. Anyway, so does that answer your question? Or did I go too fast?
No, excellent.
Okay. So you need those. All the gifts got to be functioning, as far as I'm concerned. Okay. And then as a result of all this is misplaced faith. Get out of the way. All right, so let's go a little faster. Okay, I want to leave time for. Multiplication movement is not gathering and assimilating Christian from other groups from new ones. How much church planting around the world is done that way? You'll see a lot of this going on. You'll be very tempted to do here too, and you probably will to some degree. I look at a lot of the new church plants in town. Almost all of them are filled with tribal kids from the tribal ministry that the missionaries. There's a couple of mission organizations that pioneered these mountains, and there's a lot of missionaries murdered up in these hills, by the way. Murdered, yeah, machetes. Okay, it is a result of their work, and that's how these young people, and they were well trained. Okay, and they're the ones leading a lot, helping a lot in these new church plants around here. Okay, praise God, that's good. But are we happy with just that? Okay, take a picture, bang, look, we'll get this group going. There's a lot of people that do that. I would say probably 99% of the missionary work in North Thailand is that. Okay, we got to move beyond that. I'm spending some time with some missionaries from China. They want to reach the Thai, so I'm spending time with them. Say, okay, this is how you use the Bible language. This is what the Thai is thinking. This is where you maybe should explain it to them. You might get a little more bang for your buck, stuff like that. Okay, so there it is. Okay, so I don't want to, I'll just go to the next point. Starting works without multiple generations. You should always just figure, okay, who's discipling who? Which group is starting another group? You should ask that question constantly. And when you're not reproducing, it's going to make you like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Okay, I'll just warn you ahead of time. So either you do it, or you're going to stop talking about it. Then when you stop talking about it, it's not going to happen. Okay, it says disciple is not above his teacher. So let's look at this. These are a generation of disciples, right? Okay, further removed from Christ. Is that the proper picture? It's a trick question, so good answer. Yeah, not. Okay. Further removed from Christ, more shallow a Christian in Christian-like Christ-likeness. So how do we fix the problem? So that they become our disciples? So how do we do this? Amen. That doesn't happen in a lot of places. Okay, see? Okay, sorry. But you saw what was going on there, right? Every generation of disciples becomes a disciple of Jesus. Okay, so here we go. Almost done here. I want to show a little video at the end here. I'm just going to let this play out. Okay, read the right side every time it comes up. Okay, start. If you can't.
You can't reproduce disciples, you'll never reproduce leaders. You can't reproduce leaders, you'll never reproduce churches. You can't reproduce churches, you'll never see them.
Yeah. Now, I say a similar thing when it comes to training. Most training that we engage in is not obedience-based. It's usually knowledge-based. And it's usually not very practical, so a lot of times we don't remember it, right? So I would say if you can't remember the training, you can't reproduce the training. If you can't reproduce the training, you can't multiply the training. If you can't multiply the training, you'll never ever get the movement. Okay, so that's the stuff we look at in Jonathan. Like, okay, are you figured out what you're going to do here? Okay, but what do you want to happen on the ground? How is it going to multiply and reproduce? All right. Okay, this is illustrating not the way to do movements. Okay? This usually is volume with this, but we don't have it, so. Okay, we're at the end. Okay, so that's the way they look at doing things, okay? Is that the biblical way of doing things? What does 2 Timothy 2:2 say?
That which I have taught you in the presence of many witnesses, entrust the faithful men who will then teach others.
Right. Okay, so let's look at this video. Come on, this is the last thing, and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay, here's a different way of looking at it. That's a good, I like that one. I wish you could hear the audio on this one, though. I'll tell you what it says in the end. Ah. So this is a beer.
We brew great tasting beer. Because you can get in line and take what they give you, or you can make your own choice.
Okay. You can just take what they give you, or you make your own choices. So that's the final thought I want to leave with you guys. What are you going to do? Okay, which between those two models, which was the more biblical 2 Timothy 2:2 model? That's right. We're always influencing. What's the basic definition of leadership? Influence. Influence. Okay, that was it. We all can go home and, we're going to the Korean restaurant first, right? Okay. Yeah. She's got all the money. I never have any. Okay, well, question time.
Fidelis Project exists to equip Christian leaders in a rapidly changing world. To learn more about how you or someone you know may become a student with Fidelis, visit us online at www.fidelisproject.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving us a review so that others can find us easily. You can find us also on all the major social media outlets. Just look up Fidelis Project. Thanks so much.